Think about this, the average rental property makes 200, maybe $300 a month net max. And if they were buying in the last 2 years when rates were over 7, 8%, they weren't making anything. They were negative. And so for you to come in and say, hey, we can now 10x the cash flow.
You turn the whole house into bedrooms and you rent by the room. Anything like that is going to be, successful.
Number one, the one we're talking about today is what, Kim?
Senior housing.
Traditional real estate investing is dead. Robert Kiyosaki and Ken McElroy think this is the solution.
The number one investment in real estate.
Be sure to watch until the end to uncover just how lucrative this housing solution can be.
Well, I've been in real estate for 13 years as a licensed real estate agent, teacher for a year before that, teaching third and fourth grade. But jumped into real estate. My wife was already in it, doing paperwork for a real estate team. So I decided I needed to get into sales and make a lot more money than a teacher's salary because we found out 6 months into marriage that we were pregnant and I needed to make some more monies. The 28 grand a year I was making wasn't going to pay for groceries and my rising rent and diapers. And so got into real estate, did pretty well there, built out a real estate sales team, then got into investing in 2020 when COVID hit. I had a lot of real estate transactions in escrow under contract, but I had no idea because in California they said real estate is not essential. And so I had no idea if any of those would close, when they would close. And I had a lot of money in potential commissions that was, almost up in smoke. And I had to figure out a better way. So that's when I started really investing in real estate, finding flips, trying to find rentals, creative finance, all of that stuff. And so by 2021, I learned about sober living, which is, a type of group home, but it's a specific niche of people either exiting treatment centers or basically it's a group home where everyone's agreeing to be drug and alcohol free. It's not a halfway house. They are choosing to live in a drug and alcohol free environment. They've already gone through treatment, typically 90, 120 days clean. When I found out about this, I decided it was 100% what I was going to focus on. And I started five of them in 2021.
Perfect. And as far as real estate investing goes, how was that for you? Did you end up getting any rental properties or getting any flipstone or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely flipped a good number of homes. The thing I kept running up against was I was constantly looking for that next deal. And so it was a nice hit of cash flow one time, but the mantra of a flipper is, send me your deals, help me find the next deal. So I was constantly looking, constantly trying to raise money, constantly because I was good at not using my own money, but it was like being on a hamster wheel. And so that's why I really thought, this is great. It's really good income. My first flip, I made $60,000. That's awesome. And on one of my flips, I didn't make anything. So I've never lost money, but there was one where, man, we were close. And so I decided while rates were low, kind of that 2020, 2021 period, while rates were below 3%, I was like, I need to stop selling these, just refinance them, hold on to them with a 30-year fixed loan, and get off that hamster wheel.
Beautiful. With the current properties, are you investing in those and owning the properties as well?
Yeah, so we own everything that we operate right now. That might change in the future. We have some plans for expansion into different areas like Los Angeles. I'm in Northern California, so all of my homes are there right now. But we, man, had a lot of interest from developers because when you learn how to maximize cash flow on a property and help the community, everybody with real estate knowledge wants to be your best friend because they're like, can you help maximize my property? And we found out how to 10x cash flow on homes, 10x like traditional rents. And so we've had a lot of people reaching out, offering us opportunities that actually led to my 10th sober living home. We have 10 now. And that one's in Massachusetts because some real estate guys found a property, renovated it, gave me equity, and then said, hey, can you operate this? And they're just going to keep finding more real estate. We're going to keep filling it up and operating it. And I get essentially free houses, free equity in homes because of it.
So let's dive into that. You're very active in the school group, and we're gonna get into this topic here soon. But as you know, that's one of those common things that a lot of kind of the newer members kind of struggle with is working with investors, because as you know, a lot of them may need to partner with an investor or rent from a landlord. So even though you don't, that's not necessarily your strategy, you can at least break down from an investor standpoint. Like, why don't you break down for the people, why would an investor want to work with an operator like yourself or one of our newer members?
Yeah, the big reason why is because think about this, the average rental property makes 200 maybe $300 a month net max. And if they were buying in the last 2 years when rates were over 7, 8%, they weren't making anything. They were negative. And so for you to come in and say, "Hey, we can now 10x the cash flow. We can help you get 2,000, 3,000 a month on this property and still have 2 or 3,000 to ourselves." Because literally I'm taking properties that were making 200 a month and we're making 8, $9,000 gross. So if we split that, we're still doing really well. They love us. They want us to come in and use their properties. And the fact that it makes an impact and it helps people in need, it's offering affordable housing. That's just like the cherry on top.
Whenever I go to real estate meetup groups and people, start hearing what I do, or I give them the little elevator pitch, the majority of the time their eyes light up at this point. And if it's not that, once the lights start to kind of flicker and things start to click and they understand the basics of the business model and the advantages, they're completely on board and want to learn more. Bare minimum, I've never spoken with an investor that has at least not been very, very interested.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
As you can see, this guy's just trying to he's trying to give you properties. You didn't have to really give a hard sell, right?
Right. Once they find out what we can do and that it's, they're protected because there's a lot of fair housing protections. There's a lot of, depending on the state, sometimes there's like transitional housing, temporary housing protections so that you don't have to go through the eviction process. In 3.5 years, I've never had to evict anybody. Once they realize that, they're like, oh my gosh, help me now, especially if they're in a rent controlled area, because now none of that matters.
Let's break that down a little bit. So for maybe the investors learning out there or the new people that want to work with investors, what are kind of the advantages of this business model and then the disadvantages of the traditional real estate, buy and hold model?
I'd say the main advantages, and there's a few. Number one, you're going to make way more than you ever thought possible because what we're doing is we're breaking up a typically I'm using single family homes, but we're breaking up a 4-bed, 2-bath or a 5-bed, 3-bath into more units because we're charging by the bed and we can put 2 or 3 beds in each bedroom. And so on a 5-bed home, that's now 11 beds typically, 2 in the main bedrooms, 3 in the master because it's a little bit bigger, has its own private bathroom. And so that's 11 people that you're now earning cash flow on, typically paying anywhere across the country from 650 I've seen on the low ends to well over 1,500 a month, depending on your location. And so the cash flow is just massive. That's also a lot of people that you get to help. And so you're not experiencing vacancy and crazy turnover because these people need housing for a longer period of time. You hear things sometimes about sober living where it's like weekly payments. I don't do anything like that. I want people to understand that it's a monthly payment. I want to train them for when they're in their own apartment or house. But we have people stay for like 12 to 14 months. And so, and when someone moves out, there's immediately somebody to take that spot because the demand is high. And we never really have vacancy in a bed for typically more than a couple of days. We're pretty connected with our local organizations that can fill up the beds. And that's the other piece. I love working with local organizations, county departments, because they can fill up your house and they offer case management. So there's this third party support to where if there's ever an issue with somebody, I can call the caseworker. I don't have to talk with that individual directly about that issue. There's no conflict. I can just it's good to talk to them, but if it's really big issue, I can just talk to their caseworker. They have the conversation. They want to make sure that person doesn't jeopardize their housing and things get smoothed out. So you have that help too, which is really nice. And in a lot of cases, they have a budget from grant funds to also pay for them to be there. So our people get to just work and save and not have to worry about paying us out of pocket. And so I collect a lot of like ACH payments, direct deposits, and large sums from organizations for all of the clients they send us versus having to chase down individuals for money every single month.
You just nailed all, you just nailed it. So for the folks out there listening, take notes of the main points that he hit. And then for the investors out there, I'll kind of break it down here for a sec, but Andrew just took care of all those kind of questions that you probably had up front. So one, why would anybody want to do this? So the cash flow, as Andrew mentioned, and as you see us, we say it a lot that, yeah, 10x, it's a typical 10x cash flow. So I'm sure you probably have properties that do even better than that, correct?
Oh yeah, we have one that I always use as an example. The first rental I have, first home I owned. A year later, we moved into a bigger home, turned this one into a rental, and it was making $600 a month as a rental, which is massive as far as cash flow goes, especially
Right.
for a California rental. But within 90 days of turning that into a sober living home, our cash flow went from 600 to $6,000 a month, and it wasn't even full yet. At max capacity, it was over $8,000 a month, and still is today.
We don't like to use those outliers or anything like that. 10x is kind of a typical net profit that you will see. Again, as long as you don't want to do this in a studio apartment or a 2-bedroom, right? You want to maximize the bedrooms and stuff like that. So as an investor, you're going to be making way more money, even if you do partner with an operator and even split it like down the middle, you'll still be cash flowing way more, right?
Yeah,
And
100%.
I think this is changing a little bit. A lot of investors are becoming a little bit more educated. But I remember back when I was doing wholesaling, there was a very negative definitely negative mindset about even like Section 8 properties and things like that, right? So I can just go back in time and imagine pitching, some of these investors this idea. And I know off the top, they're going to think, because it's just worst case scenario, right? They've probably gone through evictions, they've had bad tenants, and now you're telling them, hey, rather than have one person in your property, we're going to put 10 people trying to get sober. So they're imagining chasing down that rent. They're imagining having to go through evictions, not just with one tenant, but possibly like 3 or 4 at a time, right? So Andrew just took care of all that stuff. So again, mostly guaranteed checks, and that varies depending on the operator and everything like that. You mentioned the grant money a lot of the organizations are paying. What would you say the percentage is self-pay compared to like a guaranteed check, maybe through a rep payee or
Yeah,
organization?
that's a really good question. It is kind of hyper local. It depends on your area. So
Mhm.
California, what I've noticed is kind of the blue states tend to have a lot more government assistance, but any kind of county, any, behavioral health department, anything like that can apply for grant funds. SAMHSA is a national organization that's like substance abuse and mental health funding. They can apply for these big grants and use that money to provide both case management and cover the cost of housing. And what I've found works really great in that situation is you can just raise your hand and become a vendor with them and not have to have a 501(c)(3) yourself because you don't need to apply for those grant funds. They already have them. So you just sign up as a vendor, collect a check every month, you're good to go. You don't have all the issues of tax filings and meeting minutes and having a board and all of that stuff. So I haven't needed a 501(c)(3) to do any of the work we're doing now.
Want to learn more about the future real estate? Sign up for your free training material at www.grouphomeriches.com.